Good morning, everyone. It is now 8 o'clock, so let's go ahead and call our Committee on Appointments to order. Nice to see you all today.
Good morning.
So we have a number of items, Commissioners, that we do need to approve today, so let's go ahead and get started. The first is a resolution recognizing the appointment of Marshall Kilgore to the Vital Streets Oversight Commission. Do I have a motion?
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Please note, colleagues, what you're seeing on the screen and what you have in front of you is just reverse, because I got confused for a second. Mr. Kilgore is replacing his leader of the organization, WEMIAC, Mr. Bill Wood, right? And will now be serving on the Vital Streets Commission. Any other comments about this one? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that carries. Thank you. Next is a resolution confirming the city manager's appointment of Michael Bernier to the Grand Rapids Housing Commission. Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Or Mr. Bernier is, Daniel, this is a new appointment?
This is a reappointment.
This is a reappointment,
The appointment will actually begin in April,
Okay,
but since we're, tidying up, wanted to make sure Mr. Bernier didn't have a lapse in service.
okay, great. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Colleagues, any questions on that one? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
That carries. Thank you. Next is a resolution approving the City Commission's appointment of Rebecca Popes to the Urban Forestry Committee. Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. this one is a reappointment, Daniel, or this one is a new one?
This is a new appointment replacing Stacy Bear as the representative
that's
from
right.
Friends.
Thank you. So Friends has a seat on the board through their bylaws or through the ordinance, and so this is replacing that. And Rebecca serves as an employee on their team. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
That carries, thank you. That concludes all of our official business colleagues. I do want to go to our sheet that is included in the agenda packet, and then also point you to the city commissions that we've received. So we've started to do this, if you recall. So you see the communication as a city clerk goes down there, communication from Bill Wood regarding the resignations for Vital Streets. So we just approved Marshall, so we don't need to worry about that one. Communication from Cami Castaneda regarding their resignation from Community Relations Commission. I think we'll have to go back and look to see how many openings we had, because I think we have a few there. I think Aaron Yonker was one the previous meeting. And then a communication from Brianna Forbes regarding the resignation from the North Quarter Authority, Improvement Authority. And so this is one of the authorities that I serve on, and our board has she was actually the chair. We have elected officers, so we're sitting in a good spot. And I think for that one, we just have maybe 2 openings, but we'll want to actively look there. So thank you, Daniel and City Clerk, for providing this information so we can review it as we go through this piece. So colleagues, before we get started, I just want to ask, do you have any questions? I know that Daniel had shared the information related to this meeting, and there were other questions about other PIFs that were sent. Do either of you have any comments that you want to share before we go through this, or?
No
Mr.
questions, just I've been in talks with a lot of people about these different roles, particularly the ones that are unique to our appointments. So we will hopefully have some of those come through here pretty shortly.
Okay, great. Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Perdue, any comments?
No comment, thank you.
All right, thank you both. So the first one that we have is, and you know what? I'm going to correct myself and say that Patrick has a little overview for us, which probably we should do that before we jump into this. And look at you were being so quiet and not I'm just kidding.
Waiting my turn.
I'm just kidding. Because we did a pretty thorough review, I would like to shift to Patrick to do this presentation. I think both of you, when we came on, we were doing a little bit of orientation, but probably not everything all at once. So today we're going to talk about the different types of boards that exist, just what is their purview as you all go and talk about people. What is that expectation? Is it, I'm going to be voting on something that's going to impact this? Is it something I'm going to be inviting advice to? Is it to get my perspective? And so Patrick, and I know he responded very quickly to this, looked at the packet that we have for the orientation, and is going to provide an overview for us. Also, please note that this not is intended to be like a full-on presentation. We only have till 8:30, and Patrick is always available should we have any other questions as it relates to bodies. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Patrick.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good morning, Commissioners. Okay, here, what we have is generally every type of board, we have 5 different types of board as a general rule. Now, very rarely is there a board that, let me rephrase, many boards have more than one role. The primary roles that we are going to discuss are administrative boards, advisory boards, operational boards, quasi-judicial boards, and quasi-legislative boards, all right? Now, to start, the guide that I use the most, my resource, is the website. So whenever I look for information on a board, the first thing I do is go to the city's website, and under the government tab, there's boards and commissions, and then click on that, and then you can, there's a link to the description of every board and commission, and like I said, that's what I go to as my number one resource. Now, as far as how boards and commissions are created, they are often the result of state law. Well, let me just read this here. Certain state and local legislation apply to every board and commission, but legislation can also be specific to a board or commission. Each board or commission has its own enabling or authorizing legislation, which establishes the board and gives its members an explanation of its roles and purpose. Enabling legislation can be found in the city code, city commission proceedings, via resolutions, city commission policy, state statute. Okay. So getting into administrative roles or administrative boards, there are no boards that are 100% administrative. But the administrative responsibility for certain boards and commissions supervising or managing a department function or operation. The administrative role is generally fulfilled by setting policy and by overseeing the work of a regular city employee who either does the work or supervises it. Now, some examples of administrative boards are the Civil Service Board, the Grand Rapids Historical Commission, and the General Retirement Board, Police and Fire as well. Advisory boards are responsible for offering suggestions and making recommendations to the City Commission about a particular area of concern or interest as set forth in the enabling ordinance or the other measure establishing the body. This type of body is expected to provide its advice and guidance in the area of policy or operations as determined by the City Commission, but is not expected to establish policy or to decide contested cases. The actions of an advisory board are not generally of a binding nature, and the major function of such a body is to provide advice and counsel to the City Commission. Examples of advisory boards are the City Planning Commission, the Community Relations Commission, Historic Preservation Commission. An example of a solely advisory board body is the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. Operational boards are one that is mandated by its establishing legislation to actually perform work. While all boards and commissions perform work in a broad sense, operational boards do work that might be assigned to an employee, but which the city or the charter of the City Commission has committed to the board or commission to perform it. Operational boards or commissions are often composed of individuals qualified in a particular area, and the expertise of these individuals is used in doing the work of the board rather than delegating it to an employee. In other cases, the board or commission has some operational duties in addition to administrative, advisory, or other duties. There are no exclusively operational boards. An example of those are Community Relations Commission, the Historical Commission, and again, the Police and Fire and the General Retirement Board. Quasi-judicial boards and commissions are bodies that perform their duties like judges. That means that they decide individual cases or controversies according to a legislatively established set of laws or other standards without being a part of the judicial branch of the government. This role generally involves hearing appeals from actions of city officers or employees, determining what the facts are, and applying a set of laws or other legislatively established standards to these facts. Like a regular judge, a quasi-judicial body has a duty to decide specific cases upon legislatively established standards and not to establish the standards or to perform the initial investigation. Now, although on-site visits or inspections are permitted as a part of appeal process, these bodies have a responsibility to remain neutral and not to become an advocate or supporter of one side or the other in cases or on issues that come before them. Examples of quasi-judicial bodies that have the sole duty of hearing and deciding contested matters in a particular area are the Assessors Board of Review, Board of Zoning Appeals, Construction Board of Appeals, Grand Rapids Police Civilian Appeals Board. And some have quasi-judicial roles in addition to other responsibilities like the Planning Commission, the Civil Service Board, Historical Preservation Commission, and again, the Retirement Commissions or the Retirement Boards. And then we have quasi-legislative. Quasi-legislative boards and commissions are those bodies with duties that involve setting policy and which have broad discretion in doing so. Like legislative bodies, these boards and commissions choose what they believe is the wisest policy or course of action within their area of responsibility. They are generally bodies mandated by charter or state law with authority that flows directly from the law or charter. These are often bodies that perform checks and balances functions by virtue of their independence from the electoral political process. Again, no boards or commissions are exclusively quasi-legislative. Again, some of the boards that have quasi-legislative duties are the Board of Library Commissioners, the City Planning Commission, again, the Civil Service Board, and the retirement boards again. So as you can see, most of the boards serve more than one function. Most of the boards, I can't say most, but a large majority of the boards are permitted via state law that allows the city to, create this board or commission, and then by city commission policy and enabling city commission resolution, those boards are created and given power. Now, there are a number of different types of boards that have special rules outside of that. We could get in, like there's the City County Building Authority Board of Commissioners, all the DDA board, the DID boards, they all are special purpose boards, mostly created by statute. And, all of them serve their specific purposes, and it'd be a lot to go into each one of those.
So there'd be
But-
a lot of the, excuse me, Patrick, a lot of the economic development
Yes.
boards that are
Yep.
created through the
Yep,
tax increment financing rules. Okay.
exactly. So that's my brief rundown.
So colleagues, Patrick, thank you for the review. And as you can see, it's sort of, yes, multi-purpose, but I think it was helpful, especially as we're talking to people about what, when somebody asked you, I remember the first time I was asked to be on a board, it was like, you're like honored, you're like, sure, I'll be on a board, but then you don't really know what you're getting into. And I know just through our couple of months here working together, having as much information to share with constituents and others is important. Commissioners, do either of you have a question for Patrick, something you'd like to reconfirm? And this is all information that is also shared in our handbook for boards and commissions.
Yes.
Probably not as in this much of detail, but certainly in a general detail of what bodies have responsibility for.
The source of this information did come from one of those documents.
Okay.
So, yes, it's
Great.
there. It's out there if you look for it.
Great.
If you need information on it, feel free to contact me.
Great. Any other questions, colleagues, for Patrick? Hearing none? Okay, that was easy. I should. And probably, I'm trying to think of some of our newer bodies, and it's probably, was there a public safety board without public?
It's
Yeah, maybe it doesn't matter.
it's my understanding that the public safety
Mm-hmm.
has always been
It's a standing body.
a standing body or a subcommittee of the city commission,
Mm-hmm.
like committee on appointments.
Okay, and just in the years of the 12-point plan, we added citizens to that, but it still is only commissioners who can vote on that, so.
That is my understanding.
And then probably things like urban forestry and urban agriculture are also fairly newer to the,
I've been with the city for 10 years and they've been around that long.
Okay.
So I can only speak to my
it's,
knowledge in that
10 years is
regard.
a good time, so. Okay, well, thank you, Patrick, thanks for that presentation. I think if there continues to be other learnings, we can always bring it into this meeting, because I think it's good, then we can have the question versus sometimes the email back and forth, which I don't find as helpful. But I appreciate your time and sharing that with us today.
Happy to help.
All right. So if we do have a little bit of time, we can go back to our final action item to review the current board and vacancy list. You got it all queued up, City Clerk. So our Board of Zoning Appeals, I think our Planning Director, Ms. Trickelson, had mentioned to me briefly last week that there was probably going to be a resignation. And so this is an important body that hears any appeals that come from the Planning Commission. And if you can send any PIFs for this one, Daniel, that would be great. On the Community Relations Commission, we do have a number of openings. And Daniel, is these two openings, does that reflect Cami, or do we need to add a third as a third opening?
There will be a third opening
Okay.
once Cammie's resignation is recognized this evening.
And if you all recall, I think it was one of our first or second meetings, Commissioner Purdue, you provided an overview of the process that Community Relations follows, so, which is, I don't want to say a little bit different, because I think every board has, we've just learned that everyone is a little different, or reminded us of that, so, but I'll be following up to see the status of that with Ms. Stout. The rest, if you want to keep going down, I'm not going to kind of go through some of the ones that we've previously discussed. I think the Civilian Appeals Board remains one that we certainly do want to have openings for. I would say this has been a harder one to recruit for, and I keep saying that. And I know Daniel is sending us any PIFs as we get informations there. We just did an appointment for the Housing Appeals Board, so now we should only have one opening, which is great. And then I talked about the North Quarter, so we will have, can you confirm, Daniel, and if you want to, you can do it right now or later, for the North Quarter. For some reason, I thought we were going to have maybe 3, so I thought we potentially had 2 openings right now and then this additional opening.
I believe we had, oh, pardon me.
No, go ahead.
With the appointment of Mr. Skogheim at a recent meeting, that brought us down to 1 vacancy. And then with Ms. Forbes' resignation, we'll have 2.
Okay, so it's 2, not 3. Okay, wow, okay, I'm doing better than I thought. Parks and Rec, we, I think, received some PIFs for this, so we just need to do a review there and see who may be fully vetted. If you recall, I think we said we needed some representation on this body, even though it's not called for, but I think we try to find that balance of the 3rd Ward or 1st Warders that are representing probably more of the southern part of the 1st Ward, or the southwest side. Public Safety, I know Commissioner Purdue, you and I had chatted about that one a few weeks ago, but we're pretty much full there, so it's nice to have a fairly full board. And then, if you want to keep on scrolling down, and then Urban Agriculture, which I know there were some PIFs sent about that. So I know we still, scroll back up again. Thank you. For the farmer's market, they are not able to commit somebody at this point. So we're trying to understand if they would either allow us to fill that seat or what we need to do there, but that might require some language change. And then I did talk to Mr. Marquardt too about Kent County, because they can have a representative, and he works really closely with the staff over there. And then Commissioner Roberts and Commissioner Purdue, you both have an appointment as well. And then Urban Forestry as well. I know there have been some emails back and forth on that. And those are various appointments, and I think these ones are, one of these was a one for Stacy, is that correct, Daniel? Or is it?
Correct.
Okay. So one of those appointments was specifically a friend's appointment, and then I think the 3rd appointment, or the 2nd appointment is maybe a mayoral appointment, or maybe I'm wrong on that one.
Turn myself off. My records show that it's a member representing a major utility.
Okay. So that would be at this point, because we haven't changed any of the language on that one yet. So probably it'd be Consumers Energy, I think, is usually how that's defined at this point. And they, I know, had a change in their community relations person, but I see that they just identified a new community relations person, so I'll follow up on that one. And then we just filled Vital Streets, and then we just have one more, I think, on that, but that seems wrong. I don't want to say that seems wrong. I thought there was more that we had.
Pardon me. No,
Because we reduced it.
we reduced the number
Wow.
of members on Vital Streets to 13, and then there will still be the two vacancies because Mr. Wood is being just swapped out
Got
for
it. Okay, so
Marshall.
it's still 2. Yep. Okay, great. So colleagues, those are all the updates I have. I think you can see the areas, I would highlight the BZA, our public safety, CRC, CAB, and urban forestry and urban agriculture. But I know that probably at each one of those, different work is being done. And then some of our corridor improvement authorities, I think those are ones that I always like to watch just because we know business owners and individuals get busy and sometimes a new project or, employees not being around might shift somebody's availability. So I always try to keep an eye on those as well. So that's all I have for today, unless there's any other business that needs to come up under this item. Okay. Hearing none, we can go ahead and be adjourned at 8:21. Thank you. Everybody good? Good morning. It's now 8:31, and we can go ahead and call this fiscal committee meeting to order. Good morning, colleagues. I'm sitting in today for Commissioner O'Connor, so I hope to do him proud. Let's go through our agenda items. The first is a resolution authorizing conditional approval of tax exemption and payment in lieu of taxes pilot for East Point Commons.
So moved. Support.
It's been moved and supported, colleagues. Ms. Bohach, would you like to talk about this item?
Sorry. If possible, we could talk about both 1 and 2 together.
We can definitely have the discussion, but we'll just have to call the next resolution, so I'd be fine with that.
So this is actually rescinding, you've already approved both of these as pilots previously, and this is rescinding that action and reauthorizing it because there's just been a change in the legal property description. The parcels were broken up between the commercial and the residential, and so it's 2 separate parcels now as opposed to 1. So that's really what's taking place here. So everything else is the same as previously for the development of rental units for East Point Commons 2 and East Point Commons 1. So there's 56 rental units in East Point Commons 1 and 62 in East Point Commons 2.
Colleagues, do you have any additional questions for Ms. Bohach?
Do you mention commercial space? Can you talk a little bit more about that? I don't recall reading much about that in the briefing.
We don't.
Or was that from the prior conversation?
Yes, so that's right. That's because it was previously approved, but there's 2 different components of the project. But the pilot applies to the residential portions only. And but we do have a representative, Mr. Barker from Hope Network, if you would like to have more information about the project in general. It's up to you.
Colleagues?
I think it would be good. I mean, this project has been talked about for a long time.
Long time.
In fact, my question was going to be about timeline. I think everyone is eager to see it moving forward, and I know I'm particularly eager to see the permanent supportive housing move forward. We know that that is so critically needed in our community right now.
Absolutely.
So the sooner we get these units online, the better for everyone in our community. So I think having just some additional information, update the community on where we are.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm happy to update you on the project.
Thank you.
So we're very proud of this project. This is kind of a career project for most of us. The project is 118 units. It's with a third of them will be permanent supportive housing, 42 units. The timeline is we're actively working to close this project. We're trying to get it into review for finance this week and try to close it in the next 6 to 8 weeks.
This is the next 6 weeks?
6 to 8.
6 to 8 weeks,
Yeah,
okay.
depending on the world.
So by close, you mean get your financial stack all together and move forward? And so do you anticipate breaking ground yet this year?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Our goal is, our stack is in place. It is moving because of the economy, essentially.
Okay.
Every time
Okay.
a bank does something, it affects us every time. It's that sort of stuff. But we're trying to get it in for financial review this week, and we can close. That takes about 4 weeks, and then it'll take us about a week to actually do the closing, and then probably 30, 35 days after that, we should go into construction.
Great. With an opening of the units next year? Is it a 12?
With the opening of units
14
at
months?
the end of '24.
Okay,
Our goal is to try to have it out of construction in October, have the second phase leased up by the end of the year, and then the first 4 months of '25 to have the balance leased in the first phase.
great. And to fill some of the gap, are you taking advantage of any of the recent state funds that were made available for gap financing?
We have taken advantage of some funds. Thank you. You guys gave us, I think, $990,000, which greatly appreciate it. We're looking at some additional funds. Our balancing act is the time of delivery of the funds. If it's going to impact us closing, then it's better not to take the funds. But we are looking at it. I guess we just got the newest information of funds where you can apply next week for that gap. So we're actively looking at it, but just depends on the timing of it.
Great. And then can you respond to Commissioner Purdue's question about the commercial space? What's the vision for that?
It actually is not commercial space per se. There's really, I want to say, in theory, 3 buildings on the property. There's the Fulton Manor main building, and it was in 4 wings, 2 wings now, each will be a project. And the third part was the Van Andel Pavilion, which was not going to be a part of the project, and so we didn't want to make it tax exempt if it wasn't going to be used for that purpose. And so we split it off.
Thanks for being here, and thanks for the review. Hearing no other questions, colleagues, we can go ahead and take this vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
That carries, thank you. And we'll go to the next item, a resolution authorizing conditional approval of tax exemption and payment in lieu of taxes for the pilot for East Point Commons 2. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Support.
Moved and supported, colleagues. Guessing there's no other additional questions, but let me ask. Okay, hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
That carries, thank you. Next is a resolution authorizing payment to the Grand Rapids Community Foundation in the amount of $113,365.19 to the City of Grand Rapids Affordable Housing Fund.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. Ms. Claren?
Yep, this is me. This is simply, the city commission has the authority to grant property tax exemptions. We have the 2 options, the 4% of annual shelter or the 1% of annual shelter plus a 2% towards the Affordable Housing Fund. So this is that accumulation of those 2% voluntary pilot payments, $113,000 that we can contribute into the Affordable Housing Fund now. We do keep an eye on accumulation of these balances. I check it about every 6 months and then do the transfer. So, yep.
Great. It's great to see that transfer.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments or questions, colleagues? All those in favor?
Aye.
That carries, thank you. Next is a resolution authorizing a budget substitution of $704,500 for lagoon improvements at the Lake Michigan Filtration Plant.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. Mr. Berkman, welcome.
Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. So this is for a project that's out at the Lake Michigan Filtration Plant that's underway. It was awarded in December of last year. There are 2 lagoons out at the plant that handle the byproduct of the water treatment process. So this will remove 33,000 cubic yards of sludge, put back 11,000 cubic yards of sand, and also put in a dewatering system that'll help accelerate the process that is handled through the lagoon treatment. So asking for your approval of this budget substitution of $704,500 between water system fund accounts to move the necessary funding into place.
Thank you, Mr. Berkman. Colleagues, any additional questions? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
That carries, thank you. Next is our ordinance amending Section 1 of the Budget Ordinance 2022-13 for fiscal year 2023, Amendment Number 12. Do I have a motion?
Moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. Ms. Claren?
Okay. This morning, we have quite a few. So number 1 is Third Ward Equity Fund transfer. Annually, last few years, we've been having a specific allocation towards Third Ward projects. For the allocation for fiscal year 23, we had $1 million. And I believe there's consensus to put this funding towards the Martin Luther King Park Lodge redevelopment project. So this budget amendment just acknowledges the transfer from the operating fund, general fund, into the capital improvement fund for $1 million. Number 2 is related to the item I just spoke on for the Affordable Housing Fund, making that transfer of $113,000 from the general operating fund to the community foundation. Putting the funds in place to make that transfer. Number 3 is related to the participatory budgeting appropriation. One of our final, allocations that was voted on was putting $50,000 towards the Cure Violence program, specifically for the Second Ward. So we're putting those funds in place to be managed by our Office of Oversight and Public Accountability. And then number 3, this is a grant in OPA as well, that we talked about this last meeting, is just getting that appropriation of $600,000 to our other grants fund. Number 5, this is Project Safe Neighborhoods Grant, $22,000 for into the Police Grants Fund. This was related to software through SimSci. Number 6, the Bryn Justice Assistance Grant, $8,500 for the Police Grants Fund. I believe this was just wage reimbursement related to the MET team. Number 7, fiscal year 2020 Emergency Solutions Grant Coronavirus. This is $169,000 of revenue and appropriations for the Community Development Program Fund with no effect on fund balance. And number 8, the Blight Elimination Program grant. This is $177,200 to the other grants fund. Number 9, the Revitalization and Placemaking Grant. This is out of Economic Development. Almost $9.4 million to the other grants fund with no effect on fund balance. Number 10 is taking care of some much needed equipment replacement. We are funding this with some of our American Rescue Plan money. So I believe it was for bleacher replacement as well as a float purchase, $80,000 total to the General Operating Fund in the Executive Office. Number 11, Sewer System Fund is in need of appropriation around $2.1 million. This is mainly related to the GVRBA programming. Expenditures are much exceeding the forecast, and they do list reasons why, but this budget amendment is much needed, so they won't go over budget for fiscal year 23. Number 12, this is related to a land purchase, acquisition of 960 Bristol Avenue Northwest, $340,000 of revenue and appropriations in the Property Management Fund with no effect on fund balance. But we are pulling that money from the general fund balance to make this purchase. And then we do have the acquisition of 4040 and 4044 Kalamazoo Avenue Southeast. This is related to land acquired for future development of the fire department, $575,000 total in revenue appropriations from the Capital Improvement Fund. We are also utilizing general fund I'm sorry, for the previous one and this one, I said fund balance, I meant to say the contingent account as it was unforeseen. So that leaves us with the contingent balance of $1,585,000 for year to date.
Had a long one today, Ms. Claren, thank you.
Blame them.
Obviously, these items are ones that have come before us, and just working through these pieces. Any comments or questions, colleagues?
I'll just make one comment, and I know many of you share these feelings. I was excited to see a number of these moving forward, including the Third Ward Equity Fund for the MLK Lodge. Obviously, the Cure Violence expansion to Second Ward has been talked about for a long time and desired by the community. And then eager to see the property acquired over on Bristol for park space in the First Ward. And then another item that we've talked about that we know is needed in the Third Ward, and that's a fire station so that we can improve response time. So there's a lot of great items on this this list today that I'm eager to vote yes for.
Yeah. Yes, I heard from one of our past colleagues about glad to see the land acquisition on Kalamazoo, so I'm sure many other people in the audience are. So lots of good things, lots of good work, obviously working at the state level and other federal level to bring other dollars into the organization. I think it just shows the strength of our partnership, so. All right, hearing no other comments, all those in favor?
Aye.
That carries, thank you. All right, next is our bid list resolution for March 28th, 2023. Do you have a motion?
So moved. Support.
It's been moved and supported. Colleagues, we haven't been reading every single one of these, but if there's anyone that you'd like to ask Ms. Claren on, or anything that you'd like to highlight, Ms. Claren?
Most of them are pretty routine in nature, so.
Okay, all right. Hearing no other questions, all those in favor?
Aye.
That carries, thank you. Next, we'll go to our warrant report for March 1st, 2023 through March 14th, 2023. Mr. Comptroller?
Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. So for the period referenced, the city released cash payments totaling just under $19.8 million and includes just over $5 million for our employee payroll expense. and approximately $444,000 for income tax warrants. It is tax season in terms of quantity. We released a total of 5,165 income tax refunds and 1,245 accounts payable checks. And as always, the detail on the following 4 pages contains information on all the checks and electronic payments exceeding the amount of $20,000. And that concludes the warrant report this morning.
Thank you, Mr. Comptroller. Colleagues, any questions? All right, thank you. Next is our treasurer's report for period of March 1, 2023 through March 14th, 2023. Mr. City Treasurer?
Good morning, Commissioners and Mayor Bliss. With the report today, a lot has happened in the past 2 weeks, mostly around the banking world and where we've had issues with SVB, Signature Bank, also overseas with Credit Suisse and also Deutsche Bank. So we're seeing that the system's being tested right now. This really wound up being a classic run on the bank. If you really think of back to our childhoods and we watched Mary Poppins and you have enough people going and demanding their money from the bank, the bank doesn't have physical cash sitting there to just give out to customers. And so you see the bank shutting their windows, closing their doors, and they stop depositors from withdrawing their money. The same thing is today. We don't have enough printed cash to move money in and out, but our banking system takes your deposits and they invest them. Yes, you have your money there, and normal days, normal deposits and withdrawals, they understand what that movement is. In this case, SVB could not liquidate their investments without suffering significant losses in order to fulfill the withdrawal demand. And so that's really mismanagement on the bank's perspective. And you'll see more of that as it keeps coming out in the news, that they didn't have a risk manager and their portfolio wasn't structured correctly, and they only focused on a very small segment of the business. And these are venture capital firms, which are in and out of the market. And most of your banks have structured their business to have so much in mortgages, so much in commercial mortgages, so much in residential, so much in auto loans. And so they have a really big portfolio of customers across multiple lines. And they typically don't run into these types of issues. But when one bank is only positioned in one area, something could tip them over very quickly. And that's what happened in this case. And then we're seeing the testing of everyone now. So we're all looking at that. With Levi Bolt and myself, our first calls were to the 3 banks that we had more than $250,000 above the insurance level to make sure that they are still on sound footing, that our deposits are safe. And really, we weren't worried about it, but we do the double check. So we do go out and make sure that our Macatawa Bank has got a $1.9 billion facility that they can tap into should more withdrawals pop up or there's this type of crisis situation that happens. But we also try to move our money out as quickly as we can to put it to better use to invest the money. And so really our 3 primary accounts are for payables, for payroll, and for our general depository. Those 3 accounts are pretty much operational where the dollars churn through every single day. And so as soon as we recognize those deposits, we're able to move that out into a fund that actually is based on U.S. Treasuries. So it's not behind the FDIC insurance. It's full faith and credit of the U.S. government. So even then, the FDIC Treasury stood up and said, we will make sure that no depositor is harmed. And so that's happened in the past, and now we've seen any type of bank situation we see is that SVB has now been sold off to another bank. And so typically you merge those banks into another stronger bank, and that way it protects the banking system in totality. We do see that interest rates are still going to continue to increase. The Fed increased the rate by 0.25% last week. It was expected to be 0.5%, but it's 0.25 because of the crisis that's been happening. With that, our portfolio is at $534 million. It's yielding 2.37%. As we move forward into our next budget cycle and our next year coming up, I'm sure I'll be having the conversation with Ms. Claren about, we've got these excess funds. do we bond or do we use existing fund balance in various departments to actually purchase what we need to purchase or make capital improvements as opposed to bonding for it? You might be bonding for that at a 4 and 5% interest rate, yet we're only earning 2.37. So that doesn't make sense. And so we have to really look for value in that case. You know, just like you would do at home, just like had to do to buy a furnace. What do I tap into a home equity line of credit, or do I use existing savings? What do I do to fund that purchase? We have to be doing the same thing here. And so that's what I think with $534 million, we've got significant funds there, and it's built up over the time that I've been treasurer and actually working for the city. It was $160 million when I started, and so now we're sitting on $534 million. So I'm always going to earn less than what we have to pay to borrow the funds. So maybe it's where's that best place to be there? Because the one thing we don't want to do is continue to push our debt limit up closer to the max limit if we have the funds to be able to spend. So I think there's got to be a unique balance there. So that's my cautionary piece going forward, is that I can never invest the money at more than what you can borrow for.
Thank you, Mr. City Treasurer. Colleagues, any questions? I had a good conversation at the so-called water cooler with Mr. Bolt about the purchase of SVB. So in my free time, I watch CNBC, you know, these business war things. It's very fascinating, so.
I don't have any questions, but I love, let me turn my mic on. I don't have any questions. Appreciate your work, City Treasurer. And I love that we have our former City Treasurer who just walked in, Mr. Al Mooney. It's good to see you, Al. Hi. It's wonderful to see you. I'm sure you enjoyed this update from the City Treasurer.
Would you like to provide a critique?
Al, it's wonderful to see you. It's been a while. It's nice to have our former treasurer and our current treasurer in the same room together.
I can say I learned from a master.
The powerhouse, as I call them, the duo. So good to see you.
Very good. Well, hearing nothing else, I think we can go ahead and adjourn this meeting at 8:54. Thank you. Have a good day.
It is now 9:15. Community Development Committee begins at this point. We have 7 resolutions this morning, so we will start with 1. Resolution approving a fireworks discharge permit to FFP Effects, Inc. for indoor special effects at the Van Dander Arena in connection with the Morgan Wallen Concert event on April the 27th, 2023.
So moved.
Support.
Go ahead, Chief, Deputy Chief.
Inspector.
I know.
But thanks for the promotion. I appreciate it.
You're standing there looking like a chief.
Well, thanks. It's a rather large show, so yeah, I will be down there and make sure everything's safe, and more than likely we'll have a fire watch for it too.
Colleagues, any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Very good. Have a good day.
Thank you. Resolution number 2 is a resolution approving an authorization execution of an option to purchase agreement to the eventual acquisition of 4040 and 4044 Kalamazoo Avenue Southeast for $500,000 with the total cost not to exceed $575,000 in order to expand future fire safety services to the residents of Grand Rapids. Now we got the Deputy Chief.
So moved.
Support.
And I'm going to start you off here, Commissioner, if that's all right. As you may know, Economic Development Department does support other city departments and their real estate needs. And so in collaboration with Deputy Chief Brown, properties were identified to address what is a clear deficiency in level of service on the southeast side in the Kalamazoo District for the fire department. Properties were identified, none were for sale, and so we did have to approach various owners and determine the interest. And where we are at today is we do have an agreement that was voluntarily entered into with the property owners for the identified properties here. I'm going to have Chief Brown detail out the improvements to the level of service that will be achieved if we can move this forward today.
Thank you.
All right. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
14,169. That's the number of citizens that will be served by this new fire station in the First 2 District. 14,169 citizens are currently receiving subpar performance. We have a response time goal of getting our first unit on scene within 7 minutes from the time you call 911. In this part of town, we're at 54% compliance. 54%. That is unacceptable. We have been working for close to a decade. In 2015, during our initial accreditation process, the Center for Public Safety Excellence came in and validated that we did need additional resources further in the third ward. 14% of the time at my current Kalamazoo Avenue Fire Station, when engine 4 goes out, ladder 4 goes out. That district is now empty. So when that third call comes in, and that does happen quite a bit, I'm bringing a unit from my Burton station or my Division Avenue station all the way down to the tip of 44th Street. This has been a plaguing problem. There's never going to be a perfect site, but I can tell you that this site has the acreage, the frontage, the depth, and the fire department is fully committed and prepared to working very closely with the neighborhood to ensure that we fit in with the neighborhood, that we're good neighbors, that we address any concerns. However, until we have something, we have nothing to talk about. So I'll turn it back over to Jono if you have anything else.
Sure, and so the recommendation before you is to authorize the execution of a purchase agreement and go through due diligence and eventually acquire the property. And obviously in the future, there will be additional items that come to you related to development and funding of a fire station. That is not happening in the short term. And as Deputy Chief Brown said, that will be a thorough process of engagement with the community.
Yep. You know, one of the things that I'm excited about is, number one, that it's happening in the third ward. That's number one. Number two, it's been a decade working on this particular project from the time that its conception to this very point. And Chief, you made a very good point. You got 14,000 residents that are in favor of this. And so I think those 14,000 residents take precedence over any other type of comments that may exist. And that's my opinion on that. So I think this is a good acquisition, and I'm in favor of this. So colleagues, do you have any questions before we make a vote? Commissioner Knight. Commissioner, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it. Resolution number 3, resolution approving and authorizing execution of an option to purchase agreement for the eventual acquisition of 960 Bristol Avenue Northwest for $315,000 with a total cost not to exceed $340,000 in order to expand the city's green space inventory and potential future development of opportunities.
So moved.
Support.
So this is a similar item that would authorize execution of a purchase agreement. We would undertake due diligence and eventually acquire this approximately 12-acre property on the northwest side. You may have some familiarity with this property. It has gone through several proposals for development as multifamily. Both the Planning Commission and the Board of Zoning Appeals considered proposals for this property, and neither were approved. The topography of the site does create significant challenges. It is heavily wooded and has steep slopes. The opportunity to acquire 12 acres of open space in the city is a relatively unique opportunity, which is why we are recommending this to you today. We feel that the acquisition cost and the potential uses have led us here, and this is a positive recommendation. The ultimate use of the property will have to have a little bit more thorough evaluation. We do believe there may be opportunities to create some lots on the frontage, but there are also likely to be trade-offs with other potential uses as well. So similar to the previous item, until we control the property, we have nothing to talk about, and so we're recommending proceeding in this fashion so that we can undertake a thorough evaluation and come back with a recommendation for the final use of this property.
Okay. I think that the second ward will be excited with the fact that this property is going to be used in the future for some type of development, but at the same time, if my colleague, Mr. O'Connor, was here, Commissioner, he'll be happy with the fact that there's some green space that's still existing. Colleagues, any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Resolution number 4, resolution approving a construction agreement and accepting a public utility easement for Bretonfield Preserve, Phase 6.
So moved.
Support.
All right, good morning, Commissioners. So this is for the sixth phase of a single-family home subdivision located in Kentwood, consisting of 51 lots. It's north of 60th Street and about a mile and a half east of Kalamazoo. The construction agreement before you covers the sanitary sewer being installed that will serve these homes, and the utilities easement grants the city the necessary rights to maintain that sewer.
So moved.
No, we're taking a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Resolution number 5. Resolution approving a grant application in the amount of $2,184,000 to the Michigan Department of Transportation to be matched with the city's shared $440,000 in connection with the preventative maintenance of various bridges.
So moved.
Support.
Mr. Bergman.
All right, so MDOT has issued a call for bridge projects that would receive funding in fiscal year 2026. And so we're seeking your permission now to submit an application for preventative maintenance on 3 of our bridges, which include the bridge at 6th Street as well as the bridge at Wealthy Street over the Grand River, and also the Michigan Street Bridge over Division Avenue. Work items would consist of epoxy deck overlays, some sidewalk and railing repairs, as well as some painting and steel repair work on portions of the 6th Street Bridge. Total grant request is $2,184,000, which would be matched if successful with a city share of $440,000 or 20%. And approval of this resolution would be the first step in that grant application process.
Colleagues, any questions? Mr. Bergman, how old are these bridges, may I ask?
Oh, I'd have to go back and see. I mean, 6th Street, quite some time. But we have asset management plans on all of our bridges and inspect them annually, and so I could let you know. I just don't know offhand.
I'm just glad we're staying on top of them so that they don't deteriorate on us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Resolution number 6, resolution accepting an easement and authorizing a payment of $310,000. I'm sorry. For sidewalk improvements in Collindale Avenue from Michigan, from Lake Michigan Drive to Burritt Street. That's $310, right?
Correct.
So moved.
Okay, I want to go back over and make sure I didn't say 303,000.
I was questioning it myself. Support.
All right, yes, it is $310. We are in the process of developing a project that'll install sidewalks along the east side of Collindale, from Lake Michigan to Burritt, and then west on Burritt, 350 feet to tie into the existing sidewalk network. There's a future project that will also install sidewalks further to the north, but this one is funded through a Transportation Alternatives Program grant, or a TAP grant through MDOT, and will be built later this construction season. To facilitate the installation, though, we need 4 easements from properties surrounding the Collindale-Burritt intersection where a roundabout was recently installed. We previously acquired an easement from the property located at the southeast corner. The one that's before you today is at the northeast corner at 614 Collindale Avenue. So asking for your acceptance of this easement and authorizing that payment of $310 coming from the Vital Streets Fund, and then we'll return to you with the 2 remaining easements once we've successfully negotiated those.
Man, that is good, because in my mind, it was 310,000.
Yes.
We can do all the sidewalks 310. That's great. Colleagues, any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Our last resolution is a resolution approving an increase with Bergman Associates, engineers, architects, surveyors, PC, for additional design services for the relocation of city services at 201 Market Avenue in the amount of $2,152,900 with the total authorized project expenditures not to exceed $2,906,236.
So moved.
All right, so back in 2020, we selected Bergman as our architect for these services through an RFQ process as the most qualified we felt to deliver on this important effort. They helped us with the planning phases of relocating city facilities off of 201 Market to the 1500 Scribner site, which is owned currently by the Kent County Road Commission, but the city is in the process of acquiring. And all of this, as you know, in preparation for the anticipated amphitheater and surrounding redevelopment opportunities in and around the 201 site. Specifically, the city operations that are located at 201 include Public Works, Parks and Recreation, Forestry, Fleet, and Facilities Management. And we're now at a point where we're seeking your authorization to do the full scope of design services to provide the final design and get us to construction documents for bidding. So specifically what that entails, we'll be renovating the existing 38,000 square foot office building at Scribner, also renovating the existing 72,000 square foot of garage storage, adding an expansion of 74,000 square feet for indoor vehicle storage to that garage. Also adding a new 74,000 square foot fleet service and maintenance facility. And finally, adding a new 41,000 square foot refuse facility with vehicle storage, wash bay, and offices. So Bergman's fee for this final design work is $2,152,900. The anticipated timeline overall for design is 7 months, with earlier bid packages expected where we can to deliver on the office renovations and also work to advance order the longer lead time items that are associated with this, in particular pre-engineered metal buildings and mechanical and electrical equipment, so that we can get moving on those lead times. We are also, just for your awareness, in the process of selecting a construction manager and hope to return to you either at your second meeting in April or early May with a request for that authorization. So that'll be coming before you soon. But now I'm asking for your authorization for these design services with that payment coming from the Capital Improvement Fund.
Thank you, Mr. Bergman. Colleagues, any questions? All in favor? Aye. Thank you so much. The Community Development Committee, at this point in time, it is 9:30. We are adjourned.
6
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to call this Committee of the Whole meeting to order today. Commissioners, just to walk through what we have before us today, we have a full agenda. We have 5 action items and then 2 briefings. Immediately after COW, I will ask us to go into executive session with our city attorney down in the law library. Is that right? In 601, thank you. Room 601 to discuss 2 things. One is pending litigation and one is property acquisition. Commissioners, we do have on our schedule a review with our city treasurer, Mr. Glebinski. I may have Ms. Olson work on rescheduling that because we do have public safety today as well as civil service. So I want to make sure that we have ample time. So we'll likely reschedule that. And then tonight is our commission night out. So that starts at 5 p.m. over at GRPS University. We'll take some time to get started. We'll break out into small groups, give folks a chance to have some conversations in small group. We'll come back together at 7 for our business portion of the meeting. Couple changes in our evening meeting. We'll have one opportunity for public comment at the beginning. So we'll combine the agenda items and regular comments. But then we have a number of scheduled public hearings, and I anticipate we'll get a lot of feedback during those scheduled public hearings tonight. So that again will be at GRPS University, and that is the lineup for our day. So with that, we will get started and get through these 5 action items, and then we have 2 important briefings, one on the International Fire Code update as well as update from our Office of Public Oversight and Accountability. All right, any questions, commissioners? Okay, we'll get started with the first one. Our first resolution before us today is a resolution approving the request from HG Grand Rapids for a Class C liquor license, and this is located at 5500 44th Street, which is at our International Airport. Can I get a motion?
So moved. Support.
All right, moved and supported. City Clerk, anything to add, or you want me to add on this? I'm familiar with the request.
No, just quickly, so this is inside the airport. It says post-security, but I think it's actually pre-security.
It is. So this is the space before you get to TSA security. So for folks who are waiting, there will be some additional opportunities for them to gather and wait and have access to a drink if they so choose. All right, any questions or comments? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It carries. All right, next is a resolution recommending approval by the Michigan Liquor Control Commission of a social district permit application pursuant to Public Act 124 of 2020 for Adams Mixology. and Drip Drop Cocktail Room, which is located at 445 Bridge Street Northwest. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Support.
All right, moved and supported. Commissioners, any additional questions or comments? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, it carries. All right, next that will take us to a resolution approving an amendment to an industrial facilities exemption certificate. And this is for Blackmer, which is located at 1809 Century Avenue Southwest. Can I get a motion? So moved.
Support.
All right, moved and supported. We did have a public hearing related to this item at our last commission meeting. It's a growing company, a really important company over there on Century in the First Ward. Mr. Klooster, anything to add?
Nope, nothing significant, Mayor. Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. This is just an amendment to a certificate that was previously approved. This is not something you see very commonly, but because of the delays to the project resulting from supply chain issues and the increased cost, the recommendation and the final approval here today would be an amendment to the certificate to allow for the increased cost and to extend the duration for 1 year.
Great, thanks. Commissioners, any questions or comments? None. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, it carries. All right, next that will take us to a recommendation of the Downtown Improvement District Board and a resolution to set a public hearing for April 25th for the necessity of a special assessment roll, and this is assessment roll 8780. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Support. All right, moved and supported. We have Mr. Klooster can start us off here, and then we have Mr. Kelly from the DDA and Downtown Grand Rapids, Inc., and Mr. Melvin as well, and I see Mr. Mark Miller in the room as well. Mr. Klooster?
Yeah, I am just simply here to introduce our partners since this memo comes through the Economic Development Office. So Tim Kelly, President and CEO of Downtown Grand Rapids, Inc.
All right, thank you. Welcome, Mr. Kelly.
Good morning, Mayor, Commissioners. Thank you, Jono, for the introduction. As the Mayor stated and Jono alluded to, this is just a request to approve the resolution establishing April 25th as the date for the public hearing of necessity on the Downtown Improvement District. That recommendation comes to you from both the Downtown Improvement District Board as well as the steering committee that we have worked with. Full recommendation was included in the plan that was in your packet. But essentially what we're looking at is a 3-year authorization period for the DID, as well as some slight increases to cover increasing costs, excuse me. So with your approval this morning, that would set the public hearing date, and notices would go out in accordance with state law. With that, happy to take any questions.
Great, thank you. Commissioners, any questions or comments? City Manager?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Kelly, for being here. And we appreciate the work of the DID. I want to also just affirm that this proposed increase also allows for additional security that's non-sworn to help with some of the issues that people have been expressing here in downtown.
Yep, yeah, that has been part of the conversation with that board as well as some of the other boards that we work with through DGRI.
Great, thank you. Commissioners, any additional questions? So the process is, if you aren't familiar with the process, similar to other processes with CIAs, we'll set a public hearing. We'll have the public hearing, it'll come back before us. We'll have an opportunity to hear from individuals, both within in the district, and then if we have additional questions for DGRI, we are welcome to ask those at the time. And then it'll come back to us at a later date after the public hearing. All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It carries. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and that will take us to our 5th resolution today, and it's a resolution revising the existing downtown Grand Rapids Social District to add 4 locations to a common area. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Support. Moved and supported. We have Mr. Canfield here, and this is why Mr. Miller is here, to add some additional information related to this item. So we'll start with Mr. Canfield, see if we have any questions, and then Mr. Miller, if you want to add anything, you're welcome to.
All right. Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. So this resolution would amend or revise the existing downtown social district, which is our largest social district, and it was the first one established back in 2020 under new state legislation. This is what allows for the ability to purchase a to-go alcoholic beverage from a participating business, and then the customer can carry that out into a commons area in the district and consume that beverage there. This would add, as was noted, 4 locations to the Commons area. They are relatively small, and I'm going to let Mr. Miller, the Managing Director of Planning and Design at DGRI, explain the rationale for each. But the additions would be Summer Avenue from Bridge to Douglas, the futsal court and bike polo area that is along Seward, a portion, the city-owned portion of Anabawan Park, and Calder Plaza. The last 2 are re-adds. They were part of the district, and then they were removed because that was necessary to allow nonprofit events to sell alcohol there, and that is no longer necessary under state law. So the resolution would re-add those, and then the first 2 are new. And you can see the additions on page 1 of the attached map, which is on page 27 of the packet. And I'll now turn this over briefly to Mr. Miller.
Great, thanks. Welcome.
Good morning, Ms. Mayor and Commissioners. So I guess Lou did a really good job of explaining our changes. The 2 that maybe need a little bit more explanation are the area, the area on Seward that has both the futsal courts and the bike facility that's temporarily there. So that area basically goes down Seward into the parking lots that are there, and we're using that to allow people to move from like Bridge Street down into that area with their drinks. So it's just a natural progression of the way that activation has occurred. And then the other one is just a really small segment south of Bridge Street on Summer, and that is for an anticipated business that's under construction right now or rehabilitation right now that the Reinhardt brothers are doing, and that is anticipated to be open in August. So we're just making a concerted effort to get this thing up and running for them as they get their operation going. So I'm happy to take any further questions about those areas.
Great, thank you. Commissioners, any questions or comments? All right, seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It carries. Thank you. All right, Commissioners, I think before we move to the briefings, I would like to make the motion to go in executive session. Again, this would be right after we are done here at COW, and we'll go down to room 601. Can I get a motion to go in executive session for 2 items? One is property acquisition and one is pending litigation.
So moved.
Support?
All right, moved and supported. This is a roll call vote. Commissioner Perdue? Commissioner Sassi?
Yes.
Commissioner Moody?
Yes.
Commissioner Robbins?
Yes.
And Commissioner Knight?
Yes.
And I am a yes. All right, so we'll see you down there right after COW. And that will now take us to our 2 briefings that we have before us today. I think I'll turn them over to the city manager. One, as I said, is on the International Fire Code, and the second one is an update from our OPA office. City manager?
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. We're here today to provide an update on the International Fire Code. Unfortunately, Chief Lehman is unable to join us, but his highly qualified team is here, and Deputy Chief Brad Brown will be leading us in the presentation. But as you hear it, I want to you to hear it with, we're not asking for any action today. There's no vote, but we do want to make you aware of some of the changes that are in need of consideration by this body, and it's being recommended by our fire marshal. And we have several options towards the end of the presentation to discuss what those changes are and implementation strategies. And so with that, I'll ask Chief Brown to come and provide the overview. And if you can hold your questions to the end, we'll be happy to discuss your questions and concerns. Chief?
All right. Good morning, everyone. So as City Manager mentioned, we're not asking to adopt this today. It's simply informational in nature. Before we get started, I just want to point out our Fire Marshal has been with the City of Grand Rapids for 32 years. This will be his last code adoption. Just wanted to recognize all his work in keeping our city safe. We also have Inspector Roy Lagrone with us, who really did a tremendous amount of work researching the codes to bring this to you today. So every 3 years, IFC publishes a new fire code. Generally, we adopt about on a 4 or 5 year schedule. We let the new code come out, we let it sit for a little bit, we conduct our research, we see how it's going to impact the community and the businesses, and then we bring forward recommendations to the body. The fire marshal did review all the changes, and there's an important note here, and it's highlighted. New construction follows the Michigan Building Code, which supersedes the fire code. So we're several versions ahead of the Michigan Building Code. So I just want to point that out. That's important for new construction and developers to note. Construction safety. I'm sure you've seen this across the country, but you can very easily go from a small fire to a conflagration in large buildings under construction without fire protection. So the new code now requires fire watch, anything over 40 foot or 50,000 square feet. So an example would be a large building downtown, until it's fully sprinklered and protected, would be required to have someone on site 24 hours a day providing fire watch for that building. That provides early notification to my department and helps us keep emergencies very small and not spread to adjacent occupancies. We do have some retroactive things that I'd like to point out today. This one was actually adopted when we went with the 2012 code, and we gave businesses 10 years to comply with this. So there is photoluminescent tape required on stairs in high-rise occupancies. This is so when the power is out or during a fire, you can still find your way to the exit. Many of our hotels and high-rises in the area are compliant with this at this time, but we still have some that are not. And so I just wanted everyone to be aware that the fire marshal will be following up in the near future on those buildings that are non-compliant and reaching out to get a good date on when this work will be finished. We don't see this as a big issue, but we just wanted you to be aware that the sunset date from something we decided a decade ago is upon us. This is where we're going to have some more discussion. This was originally added to the 2018 International Fire Code. If a building meets 3 criteria, it's required to have a fire suppression system in existing buildings. Those 3 criteria are an assembly occupancy, consumption of alcohol, and a capacity of greater than 300 people. Now, when we take that step back, think about our community and think about what buildings that requirement is going to impact. And we're like I said, we're going to discuss that further towards the end, but these are the halls and a lot of nonprofits. The potential cost is quite significant. So if you're looking at a building cost, per building cost, 50 to 75 grand is a starting point. But once you get into retrofits and hooking up to city water, it very easily could be $150,000 to $200,000. And so I just want to be very clear up front that we have about a dozen to 15 buildings in our community that this would impact, and they would incur significant costs to come within this standard. Finally, we do have a few hotels and motels that would be required to install a fire alarm system. The cost of this would be approximately $30,000 to $50,000, and this ensures early notification, again, to my department in the event of an emergency to hopefully keep the fire to one room rather than spreading to the entire structure. Chief Lehman is not here today, so I'm going to channel him. And I usually try not to read slides, but this is very important, and I want to capture his words perfectly. As your fire chief, John Lehman, I must recommend adoption as written, but do appreciate their significant impacts to historical institutions in our community. Our overall goal is to ensure as safe an occupancy as possible if there is not an appetite for total adoption. So the recommendation from the fire department, you've charged us with providing public safety to this community. It's to adopt the code as written. We would educate impacted businesses. We would start enforcing later this year. And then we would work with impacted buildings to go up to 3 years. And we'd even be willing to go 4 years if needed to get that new retroactive equipment in place before the next fire code is adopted. That's really the time frame we're looking at. Possible alternatives. We could adopt the code as written, but we could lower capacities for affected businesses to 299 people on a daily basis rather than that 300. That's the threshold. A few times a year when we have special events, we can go out and do an inspection, assign fire watch and crowd managers, and feel reasonably safe that those structures are safe for our community. And that's something that we would be willing to consider if the appetite is not there for full adoption. That's all I have. The subject matter experts are behind me, so if you have any questions.
Mayor, before we conclude, I'll ask Chief Brown if you can clarify, if we were to lower the capacity limit to 299, how many businesses would be affected by that?
I think Roy or Doc, you did the research. A good portion of them, I don't have the exact, but a good portion of those 15 or so businesses, we would be able to lower to 299 and avoid the retroactive requirement. So it's the majority.
I thought, and I remember a number less than 3 or so would not be in compliance if we were to lower it to 299. Is that about right? Yeah.
Two.
Okay. All right, thank you.
All right, thanks, City Manager. Well, I'll see if there's any questions. I'll start. I've been a part of this conversation in the past, and I still feel very similarly in that I'm concerned with some of these changes and the impact that they would have on our halls and nonprofits and historic buildings. So I still have that concern. I anticipate we'll hear from some of those folks again, as we have in the past. So I appreciate you providing a potential alternative. And I would like additional information, as well as maybe a little bit more detail on the list of who would be impacted and what their current capacity is. I don't know if some of these facilities have a capacity of 500 or 600 and what the impact would be to lower that by whatever percentage. So that would be helpful as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Commissioners, any questions or comments? I'll start with Commissioner Moody and then Commissioner Robbins.
Yeah. Thank you, Chief, Deputy Chief, for this report. I wanted to ask that it's good to know that after 3 years that you're allowing the companies to be in compliance, but after those 3 years, what is the penalty for non-compliance?
Come on up, Fire Marshal.
Good morning. Thank you for having us here. Violation
Just state your name for the record. There's media here.
Eric Doctor, Fire Marshal.
Yeah. I felt like everyone knows Mr. Doctor. But
Possibly not. With new committee.
True. Good point, City Manager.
If a assembly is out of compliance with the fire code, it's technically a civil infraction offense, and if assemblies or businesses do not come into compliance, we typically take the path of shuttering them until they do. So yes, it's in order to be fair across the board, that is our typical process.
Okay, I was just interested in that because it's not stated here, which doesn't really have to be.
Right.
But I do think that those businesses who are going to be in compliance or who are going to look at the public safety for their buildings to be protected in reference to the case that there is a fire, that they need to have the importance of understanding that there is some penalties that do exist if they don't comply.
Yeah. Good point, Commissioner. And I think that was the concern last time, that for some of these organizations that can't afford this level of upgrade, that essentially if they're not in compliance, they could be shut down altogether. And I know that we still have a lot of halls that fall under that. So, yeah. Commissioner Robbins?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just curious, with the organizations that will be most impacted by this, is it, like multiple times per year that they would have to seek like the special event type permit if we went with an alternative, or are these organizations that consistently are over 300 occupancy?
No, we would want to not have that happen all that often, but on the other hand, we're flexible and our interest is to serve the community. So for those major fundraising events that they might have, those would be the times. I don't think that we would necessarily put a limit on how many times they could do that. Right. Annually, there's some cost involved with doing it on a per event basis. So,
thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner.
And I think this probably has been talked about before. Obviously, the cost would be a huge impact on smaller nonprofits that, are struggling to cover payroll, let alone infrastructure, and a change that huge. What is the difference in the cost in the other alternative that you talked about, in having someone on site if they had events over that size? I mean, a lot of nonprofits I know, they typically don't have a lot of events in there, but the halls do. And what is the cost in having someone on site managing that every time they had an event?
So we anticipate, and the fire code provides for trained personnel within the community or within the business to be able to perform those functions. So as far as the cost, they would have to train their volunteers, and I think the Fire Prevention Bureau division would be willing to conduct some of those trainings over the course of the years, or once a year, or periodically at least. So with that change that we're proposing as a possible alternative to adopting the code as is, the cost would be, of course, them lowering their capacity for those times that they don't have special permission to do, to return to their original capacity. But other than that, I don't anticipate a huge cost on a daily basis.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, any other questions? Commissioner?
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks for the presentation. So I just want to make sure I heard Deputy Chief, you correctly. You had talked about some of the changes that you would give people 3 years or 4 years to be in compliance. And then I looked at the piece with the stairways. They had 10 years. What's the decision-making process and the length of time that you utilize for that?
I'm afraid I was not in this position 10 years ago.
32 years ago? Okay.
So I'm not exactly sure about the reasoning. I believe that was a new provision, and so the cost was not really kind of even known how much that would cost for each building to put in. I believe that was why the 10 years was given, so that the industry could mature and that the costs would stabilize.
Okay, thank you.
But don't quote me.
Okay. I too would be interested, Mayor, in a list of the organizations and where they fall geographically as it relates to all of our wards. And then, I think it would also just be, as somebody who runs a smaller nonprofit, those are certainly considerations. And so I always say if you have one thing and that folks might have concerns about it, provide an alternative. So I appreciate that. I think that's very proactive. And I also am wondering too, as you go into this compliance period for the illumination, I'm also interested to see how that process goes, because we'll kind of see it fully as we look forward for this new code. So thank you.
Yeah, good questions. All right, any final questions or comments? All right, thank you all. It's
Mayor.
good to see you. City Manager?
Yeah, I'm gonna, don't leave yet. I'm gonna need some more clarification on direction for moving forward so that we're clear. So if I could, I heard concerns about cost and impact, and we certainly can bring that back. I think the chief is wanting to prioritize this ordinance moving forward, because even though it's targeting the fall, there are things we would have to do in terms of drafting, hearings, et cetera. But it seems to me like we have some more work that can be done, and I'm happy to work with the Public Safety Committee in working through that before we bringing the item back and following up with them, certainly getting a list of impacted businesses, but I think that would be good if we're going to work through some of these concerns and not do it as a whole.
Yeah, I'll just share my opinion. I'm not comfortable moving forward with this at this time until we have additional information. And so I think if we can start with that, so that we have a sense of who is impacted, what their current capacity is, what the cost would be, what is an alternative, what would that alternative cost them, that would be helpful to me.
Yeah, and we can get that. I think we have general numbers. I know we have the specifics, but we'll certainly provide that with the Public Safety Committee. What I'm also hearing in terms of just the most significant changes is the fire suppression system. The construction watch manager, if we were to prioritize what is in the best interest of public safety and not an increased cost to businesses, particularly on these constructions that are over 40 feet or 50,000 square feet, if we wanted to make, if you will, low-hanging fruit changes. Would you agree that's probably the one that we should make with all the construction that's going on without delaying everything else?
Yes, sir, absolutely.
Okay.
Additionally, most construction projects do have 24-hour, security on site, and so it'd just be a matter of training them on fire watch procedures. In other words, the kind of timing that they'd have to have for the rotation. So.
Okay.
City Manager, I think for that one too, though, it'd be good for us to know the impact, especially as we try to support smaller scale infill projects with smaller developers and business owners. So I think even on that one, what would be good, at least for me, to fully understand and appreciate is the cost to those potential developments. We know right now it's hard to make the numbers work already, and if they need 24/7 security on smaller projects, I would like to know the impact that has on those businesses. I don't know what the cost would be for 24/7, and so it would be good just for us to fully understand that.
Yeah, we'll certainly get that, but I think it's the same provision that we were talking about the halls, that you allow the organizations to train their own staff internally to be able to provide that service, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks. Appreciate you. All right, that will take us to our next update today, and that is an update from the Office of Oversight and Public Accountability regarding operational policies and programs. Hello, Mr. Davis. City Manager, you want to kick this off? Or do you want Mr. Davis to just take it away?
Take it away.
All right, good morning. Thank you all for the opportunity to provide this update. We are excited today to talk about several things that have been going on in the Office of Oversight and Public Accountability. Today we will talk about OPA's completed policy. We'll also talk through some of the programs that we've been working on, including our immigrant and refugee engagement work. We'll also hear from the Office of Equity and Engagement through Ms. Stout, related to some of the work that office is doing as well. So we'll talk about Project Clean Slate, our community-informed law enforcement training, get through our I Am the Dream Civil Rights Youth Academy, Know Your Rights, the Welcome Plan, and then some data-driven initiatives. So just as a way of a reminder, OPA's mission is that through targeted change, accountability, restorative justice, empowerment, and engagement, will help create and improve just outcomes and respectful relationships between public safety and community. But we do that through the lens of our values, and we always lead with the city's values, but in addition to those city's values, we lead with true justice. And that means that we believe in transparency. We're always being upfront and honest about what we do and what we say. We also believe that it's important that we lead with responsibility. That's being accountable and considering the big picture as we do our work. We also believe in unity, right? We're working to build bridges between public safety and community, but we lead with equity, and we're always advancing just outcomes and opportunities by leading with racial equity to address the root causes of disparities. Finally, we're interested in justice, and that means we're always operating with integrity and doing the right thing. So with that in mind, it was important that we continue to work to develop OPA's policy. And the truth is that really began back in 2019, right? So we started the work of building out a policy that would guide the work of our office by hosting community work group sessions, and those sessions included representation from community members, organizations, and city staff. And when we say city staff, that's people in multiple departments, including the police department and the fire department. But since that time, there's been a lot of iteration as it relates to the policy work of OPA. And some of that is due to the fact that we had collective bargaining between the city and our public safety departments. And recently, as a result of that, we had clarifications to grants of authorities that were provided to OPA, and also clarification to our jurisdiction. At this point, the city has reached bargaining agreements with the fire department union as well as the Police Officers Association. We've yet to reach an agreement with the Grand Rapids Police Command Officers Association. So our new policy reflects the language in the agreements with both the fire department and the Police Officers Association. Now, in addition to all of the training and the books and administrative documents we looked at, we really spent some time looking across the country at what oversight offices do and how their policies look. It's important to note that we are the first office of this kind in the state of Michigan. So we're really building new ground as it relates to what a policy should look like, how it operates, and along with the laws and rules of the state of Michigan. So now we do have that formalized policy. It formalized our authority, our jurisdiction, and the oversight functions of OPA. It also talks about how we interact with GRPD as well as the fire department and our role with the Civilian Appeals Board. It provides an analytical framework for auditing internal affairs investigations and for auditing officer-involved shootings. It establishes the framework for conducting supplemental investigations for the Civilian Appeals Board, provides an overview of our community engagement activities and data-driven initiatives, and it talks about the interdepartmental information management and records policies. So that policy is now available, or should be today available if it hasn't uploaded yet, available on OPA's webpage, which can be found by going to the city's page and simply searching OPA. So in addition to our policy work, we're excited about our programming work. This is our second year with Project Clean Slate, and Project Clean Slate was amazingly successful last year. We were able to help over 500 people in community, and that's in addition to the other work that was done by community partners that we were able to support. But the city was able to assist over 500 people in navigating the criminal expungement process, and this gave them the opportunity to do things like get stable housing, to find employment. I'm often reminded of a conversation I had at the expungement event with a lady that was sitting across from me. And she came in, I think she was unaware that she was eligible for an expungement. So she sat down, we ran a record, and I told her, I said, well, you're eligible for an expungement. And she started bawling, full of tears. She said, for the first time, I think I'm going to be able to adequately take care of my children. It was a life-changing moment for her, and that's the work we're doing, and we're proud to do it. Again, this year, our expungement fair will be held May 13th. This year it'll be at the Kroc Center. It'll be from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. We are soliciting volunteers again. Last year we would not have been able to do the event without all of the amazing volunteers and collaboration we had from other departments. So we're looking for general volunteers that can just help with logistics. We need notaries again, and we're also seeking attorneys. So in order to volunteer, individuals can again go to our webpage on the city site, click on that Project Clean Slate tab, and fill out the volunteer information. We do have a volunteer training, so you don't have to be an expert in any of these areas to do the work, but we'll make sure that you have the tools necessary to do it. It's also important that we note that there's an automatic expungement provision that is happening in the law, so some things will automatically be expunged, and we're definitely excited about that as well. So this year's event is happening. You may remember that last year's event happened in April, but this year's event is happening in May in order to give us the opportunity to go through that automatic expungement time period before people come to the program. In addition to the expungement event, or along with it, the JARS Cannabis company came to OPA and said, we want to do a felon-friendly job fair as part of this event. We recognize that, some people are coming in and they just don't have stable employment, and we think this is a way we can give back to community. So we're working in conjunction with this organization to do this social equity job fair. There will be multiple felon-friendly employers from inside and outside of the cannabis industry that will be present, and they're looking forward to hiring members of our community. There's also a job readiness training that will be offered as well. So if members of community are interested in participating in that job fair, they can just show up, but you can also get the training you need ahead of time to be more competitive. And again, how do we get that? Go to OPA's webpage and we'll get you all the information regarding it. So in addition to Project Clean Slate, we also have our community-informed law enforcement training. And commissioners, you may remember that this was an initiative that was supported in our last budget cycle. And the way this program works is a joint initiative between OPA and our public safety departments. The idea behind this is that we solicit community ideas and proposals for police trainings. We know that we've heard from community at many different times saying these are the types of trainings we want to see, or we want our voices elevated in this process. And this program does exactly that. It solicits ideas and proposals from community on a rolling basis. Now, preference will be given to ideas that align around our values, right? That true justice values, and also our strategic programming related to Care Plus, that change, accountability, restorative justice, engagement, and empowerment. But a team of individuals from OPA, the Office of Equity and Engagement, and the training unit will sit down and review every proposal that is submitted from community to evaluate a couple of things, right? And the major thing we're looking at is, does it meet the program objectives? Those objectives are to train. We're looking to train public safety to understand community concerns and increase cultural competency. We're also looking to repair bridges of trust between public safety and the community it serves. We're looking to amplify the community's voice and role in policing, and to increase the respect and understanding of marginalized groups. Additionally, we're hoping to normalize positive interactions between public safety and community. So as we evaluate these policies or these programs that are coming forward, that's what we'll be looking for. So what are we asking for from community? We're asking community to submit ideas or proposals to OPA for this training. Now, we recognize that community may just have a one-sentence idea, or maybe they may have a fully vetted out training that they're ready to do. Whatever stage it's in, we're happy to have it and help them navigate that process. So we'll connect with them regarding that. We'll have a proposal review meeting, and we'll assist in developing and working out the implementation of that training. OPA will then review those proposals, will prioritize it, conduct the review meetings, and we'll work with our public safety departments and OEE to develop and implement those trainings. All right, that takes us to the next program. We've been working. So the next program that we're talking about today is the I Am the Dream Civil Rights Youth Academy. And I'm extremely excited about this program. This is a civic engagement program that is designed to equip middle school scholars with the knowledge and skills necessary to become civic leaders, to become future commissioners, to become police officers, to work in our fire department. We're hosting 8 weekly sessions with these scholars, and we've built a curriculum that will allow them to learn their rights and responsibilities, understand what it's like to engage civically, and our goal is to inspire them to become leaders, to allow them to discover their own voices, to provide that skill building necessary through hands-on projects and activities, to teach them how to interact with law enforcement, and also create that occupational awareness within our criminal justice system. We know that we need pathways to have, if we want diverse departments, we have to create pathways now so that we can continue to move forward that way. So, our target audience and selection process is middle school students in the city of Grand Rapids. We're looking at ages 11 to 14. For this first pilot version of this, we'll do up to 40 individuals will be allowed to participate. And we are starting in the third ward, recognizing that traditionally and historically, this has been a disenfranchised area of our city. So we want to make sure that we put that investment there. So we are partnering with Alger, Burton, Gerald Ford, River City Scholars, and MOK Leadership Academy. Here you'll see a few of the sessions, and for the interest of time, I won't read all of them, but it is available again and will be available on our webpage. But you see, we start with just some background information, a review of the history of policing. We talk about their rights and responsibilities. Then we get to the exciting part. At the end of it, they'll get to apply all of that knowledge through a mock trial process and see what it's like to participate in the criminal justice system in that way. So in order to participate, we're asking our scholars to submit an essay just explaining what does the dream mean to them, recognizing that everybody's at a different level. If they don't want to do an essay, they can do a video. They could do, basically, if they get it to us, we got it, right? So we have different opportunities for them to submit it, but they can submit a 1 to 2 minute video or audio submission in lieu of writing those paragraphs. And we have a few places where those applications are made available. One of the exciting things about this program is through participation, those scholars will also get a membership to the Boys and Girls Club. So we're excited about that partnership. Session 1 is scheduled for June 1st, so the applications are available today, and we're asking that you spread the word and help our young scholars become a part of this program. At this time, I will turn it over to Ms. Stout, who will take us further.
Thank you, Mr. Davis, and thank you for the work that you're doing. If this was a clapping situation, I would clap for you right now. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Inside, they're just cheering. Thank you. Stacey Stout, Office of Equity and Engagement, excited to be with you today. So, and thank you to Mr. Davis for inviting me to join in his presentation around the work that we're doing with immigrant and refugee communities, also known as New Americans. So the Welcome Plan, if you're familiar with it, is a critical component of the City of Grand Rapids' broader strategy to make our organization and the broader city more inclusive and equitable. Becoming a welcoming community both in culture and policy is key to embracing immigrants and our longtime residents. And as you know, welcoming is a key part of our mission and squarely aligned with our value around equity. So we have a snapshot. This is not all inclusive of all data, but just to kind of give you an essence of our community, roughly about 11% of Grand Rapids population is born abroad. In comparison with the county, about 8.3%. So Grand Rapids is home to approximately 41% of the county's population who are considered foreign-born, and that's a term by the census. In the local city with the largest, as far as percentage, is our neighbor of Kentwood. And as you can see, that also translates into school populations by districts with the largest counts of immigrant students, with us, Grand Rapids Public Schools being second. Countries of origin, according to the American Community Survey, by far those from Mexico, followed by Vietnam, and then Guatemala. So looking back, for those that are familiar, just kind of to review, this journey started in 2017. We were part of a collaborative that was awarded a research grant with Gateways for Growth. And through that, we were able to work and create the Demographics and Economic Impact Report. This is an economic snapshot, but as we often talk about in our office, that one's ability to contribute to the economy or capitalism, is just a part. It's not their whole worth, and so we really struggled with how that was framed. But we're excited about that report, and it generated a lot of support, which at the launch parties of those two reports, of those two sessions, and then. Later in 2019, we were awarded another grant for technical assistance and strategic planning, and then we dove deep to do engagement. We had just dozens and dozens of focus groups, hundreds of surveys, and then we were able to work those that voice of immigrant and refugees into recommendations that were categorized by themes, which then we released in our Welcome Plan in September of 2020. So the intersection of the Welcome Plan and the City Strategic Plan is squarely along equity and community. So that's the intersection of our word cloud. And then on the right, you'll see this diagram. In the darker color, the Welcome Plan, their categories of recommendations, and on the right is a City Strategic Plan, and you can see there's a direct alignment there. So quick updates from the work groups. The general theme of work groups for the Welcome Plan is really around learning. What's the data? What are other people doing? Some landscape mapping. What are the policies when it comes to new Americans, whether it's with education or immigration? And so the Safe and Connected Communities Work Group recently had a Q&A with Puertas Abiertas to connect the community with the Sheriff's Department, Kent County Prosecutor, GRPD, Wyoming PD, issues related to domestic violence and human trafficking. And so that's one of the updates and a photo there of a news coverage. And then, of course, we have city representatives on this work group. Ooh, that must be out of order. Okay, well, we're just go right to the steering committee then. So the steering committee, and I would like our new Welcome Plan Coordinator, Holland De La Cruz, to please stand, just so they know who you are, Holland. This is Holland. And then also Sierra Hatfield from our office, who I didn't tell to stand, but there you go. She works with me on the steering committee, of course, with Kent County, Samaritas, the Hispanic Chamber, Grand Rapids Chamber. But we also expanded the steering committee recently to increase those with lived experience. So we have Umendi and also Dilly got them from the Bhutanese community. So we meet quite often, at least once a month, but also as needed to help steer and support the Welcome Plan as needed. So additional work group updates. So again, survey data, the data metrics, trying to get what is already happening out in community, what organizations are interested in being involved. The Equitable Access Group is doing a service scan and also connecting with the Department of Justice to host information sessions on language access. Very proud that our city also is about to finalize our language access policy. The Improve Educational Outcomes Work Group is also connecting with the Department of Ed to understand these policies. And so once they understand the system, they're better able to navigate it. The Maximize Economic Potential, they're exploring models right now to connect immigrant and refugee populations to workforce opportunities. There's a funding group to keep this moving, so creating a development plan and also begin tracking past support as we continue to want to invest in this work across the county. And then Engaged Communities Work Group, really assessing different contact lists to help spread the information and making sure that we're using culturally responsive communication channels to get information out there about resources. Also recently connected with Global Michigan and other community partners to seek understanding, prepare an educational resource for broad distribution around child labor exploitation. So we worked in partnership with several partners. We're also preparing for Welcoming Week, and those are the dates, so be prepared for that, Mayor, as we do another proclamation, but also do educational and celebratory type events across the city. And then representatives from my office and also OPA will be going to Welcoming Interactive. Through our membership, we did have free registrations there to help bring that learning back to our organization. Again, Holland De La Cruz is our Welcome Plan Coordinator with several links that we can get you. So from just a snapshot of what we're doing, of course, steering committee, we also, our office launched the Welcome GR Learning Welcome GR Learning Series for city staff, specific around the Welcome Plan recommendations and local happenings. Welcome Week Proclamation, which I mentioned. This summer, I'm very excited to partner with the African Collaborative Network for city staff training that's full immersion. So it's 101, 201, and then ending with an immersion experience with different immigrant populations. And we're going to begin with the African population. Intentional outreach and inclusion for the Neighborhood Summit. So examples of past workshops are shown here. And we're currently in the process of accepting workshops as well and doing some focused outreach there as well. We've had intentional partnership with our MLBE program, Micro Local Business Enterprise Program, with the Hispanic Chamber, the West Michigan Asian American Association, GRAB, and others to help diversify both the MLBE program. And then, of course, significant funder and supporter of the Lucha Fund for those that did not receive a very critical support during COVID. We're finalizing a contract with Glimpse of Africa. Actually, we have the contract. We're finalizing that to get a report on best promising practices of engagement. Like I said, the access policy, excited to kick that off. And the work that we've been doing around the river. We just finalized the equity framework for the river. And then, of course, our office has been doing BIPOC engagement plan for quite some time that is inclusive of immigrant voice. Sierra Hatfield, who is also with the Welcome Plan, is creating tools department-wide, which will include immigrant and refugees as far as language and other groups to make sure that we are being very intentional as we create policy and practice here. The CRC continues to reinvent itself. I'm very excited. They just have a subcommittee as we restructure around the welcome plan and being welcoming. Of course, our partnership with OPA and our sponsorships trying to be more intentional. And lastly, I just wanted to give you some examples of the Neighborhood Match Fund. We will be accepting proposals again in June. For those watching, you want to go to our website, Neighborhood Match Fund. And here's some examples, whether it's wellness workshops we've done or celebrating International Women's Day for Latina immigrants, Puertas Abiertas, who's doing just phenomenal work, documentaries, and also helping engage the parks in those winter months. So with that, I will hand it back to Mr. Davis.
Thank you. So I'll expedite through this next section, but the next program that we have from OPA's perspective is the Know Your Rights program, and it's a perfect segue from what Ms. Stout was just discussing, because our program is designed to help our community members really understand their constitutional rights as it relates to public safety procedures and best practices. And these workshops are offered. They're 1.5 hours, and but what's really unique about this program is the goals in which we're working to increase knowledge. We're also building greater understanding between law enforcement and the community, and we're working to improve those strength relationships and to foster safe interaction with law enforcement. What's unique about this program is the way it's designed. So there's 4 different workshop topics. So community members can choose to take any one of the 4 or all of the 4, and they'll be offered publicly with scheduled times from OPA, but we also have designed this program in a way that community organizations can come and ask for it, and we'll go to them and provide the training. But there's the civilian oversight training that provides the history of oversight, OPA's model, and just helps community understand the role of OPA here in the city of Grand Rapids. There's also training related to what to do if you're stopped by the police, and that covers the basic rights of community members during police encounters and shares best practices for safe interactions. Then we have our refugee and immigrant rights section, and this is really unique. We haven't found this anywhere else across the country, so we're excited about this work, but it discusses the rights of migrant and refugee community members, and we have partnered with Migrant Legal Aid to help develop this. And it explains the jurisdictions of various law enforcement agencies. But what's really unique about this is it compares the laws of the country of origin for where these our migrant and refugee community members come from to those here in the United States or to those here in Grand Rapids. So there's a clear understanding of the differences in application and interaction with the police. And then we have a general introduction to the criminal justice system and how those processes work. So in the interest of time, I'll move forward. And Ms. Stout talked about why we're working with our refugee and immigrant community so much, but we recognize that our immigrant and refugee community members face additional barriers, including those caused by structural racism and systemic inequality. So we've partnered with Migrant Legal Aid to develop these workshops, and we've invited individuals from community from our immigrant and refugee organizations to provide their feedback on the Know Your Rights program. So how do we do this again? Easy answer, you go to OPA's webpage or you can give us a call. And there's a form there where organizations can request training. We'll come out to the organization and provide it. We'll continue to assess that. And then we have our first workshop is scheduled for May of 2023. I did want to take a second and recognize these amazing organizations who've been working with OPA, not only to develop this training, but also in our immigrant and refugee engagement in general. Some of them are here today. I did see partners from the Refugee Education Center, which you guys wave your hands, and we have partners from ALLPAC here today, and partners all across the city who have been supporting this work. So we're very grateful for that. We wanted to spend a little time talking about our refugee and immigrant data project. So again, Ms. Stout talked a little bit about this, but we recognize that as of 2020, King County is home to over 100,000 immigrants and naturalized citizens. But we recognize there's still a need for data in this space, in particular, especially as it relates to interaction with our public safety department. So we're in the process of designing a landscape analysis for our immigrant and refugee experiences with law enforcement, and we're asking these types of questions. What data and information is currently collected? What data capabilities do organizations that we partner with have? And what are those primarily challenges? And what we're working to do is build interventions based off of that data. So instead of starting with our ideas of what to do, we're starting with the data and building from it to build interventions to build more positive relationships. So I also want to spend a little time talking about our traffic stop data analysis. So as you know, in 2017, there was a traffic stop study that was sent to determine whether there were disparities in traffic stops executed by GRPD along the lines of racial, ethnic, and gender lines. And the study did find that there were disparities. But since that time, there has not been an update related to our traffic stop studies. And we heard both from recommendations from community, then from commission, and ultimately the city manager directed OPA to look at this traffic stop study. And again, we were asked to look at it on a biannual basis. So now we're at the process of doing that. This is an update where we'll look at the data over the last 5 years to evaluate where we are now. So the initial research questions we're looking at is there evidence of race, ethnicity, or gender-based disparities in traffic stops? And how have the trends in traffic stops shifted over time? Now, ultimately, the purpose of this study is to follow up on the previous set of recommendations and to determine if disparities are borne out in evidence and determine interventions that create a more equitable Grand Rapids for our drivers. So as we look at this from a timeline perspective, we were fortunate enough to get a Harvard Bloomberg fellow who's working with data scientists from Harvard at building out what this process looks like. We anticipate this being, well, it has to be done during the time that Bloomberg fellow is here. So we anticipate that happening over the next year. All right. Well, that takes us to the end of the presentation. I do want to thank both the city manager and commission for his continued support of OPA. In particular, we could not do this work without the amazing staff that works in our department, and several of them are here today. So I thank you for your work.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Davis. City Manager, anything before I open it up for questions and comments?
I too want to thank the staff and Mr. Davis for their leadership on it. We have a very special Office of Oversight and Public Accountability. I think the premier office in the state, in that we're not just focused on accountability and transparency, but what you've heard today is a lot of other supportive efforts to help us with restorative justice, community engagement, violence prevention. I think that that's a very unique aspect of this office, and I really appreciate the work that has been done. I mean, we created this from the ground up with the support of this commission and community, and I appreciate their continued good work.
Yeah, thanks, City Manager. I'm going to add my thanks to Mr. Davis and your entire team, as well as Ms. Stout and your entire team for all the work that you've done. I really appreciate getting this update. And I especially appreciate all the work being done around the welcome plan and implementation. I want to thank all of our community partners, but also Kent County for stepping up. When we first started talking about this work back in 2017, I cannot believe it was that long ago, I, along with several others, said this isn't just a city issue, it's a countywide issue, and we need a countywide plan, and we need countywide support, and we need to be looking at implementation across the county. So really appreciate their partnership in this work. I have one concrete question, Mr. Davis, for you related to the traffic study. So will the process that we're using then for the current analysis of the last 5 years then be different than the study that occurred in 2017, where we actually had we had identified, I believe, 20 different intersections. We had people there on site, and there was real-time data collection and analysis and comparison. And then with if I remember correctly, we also broke it down between actual stops and equipment failure stops, and there was kind of a deep dive in the types of stops and then what proceeded after the stop.
Right. So the methodology is similar in some ways, but we are learning from the past study to try to advance it so it won't be the exact same process. One of the things we're working through with the Harvard data scientists now is how reliable that data collection methods still are today. Right. So that's why we didn't present a methodology at this point. Our plan is we're in the development stage for that methodology. And once we're able to get more finite answers from those Harvard data scientists, we can update you on what that will look like.
So a follow-up question to that. I remember back in 2017 when we did that, we looked at other cities across the country, and at the time this was considered a best practice. Are there other examples now since then that are more reliable and valid processes?
There are other examples, and we have begun the process of looking at some of those other cities as well. I think the question of whether they're more reliable is subjective, and we're hoping to get to a more objective answer before we make the final determination of what that looks like.
Okay, thanks. That's good to know. Appreciate that. All right, questions? I'll start down here with Commissioner Moody.
Thank you, Mr. Davis, for this report. I'm very excited with the fact that you're going to be partnering with the public school system for your 8-week program to assist children and teenagers to look at the departments that we have and to groom them for the future. I think that's exciting because I always believe in grooming your own first before you go outside and look for others. That's just what I believe. Others may believe, but you always look for the best possible candidate. If you don't have it, then you go out and look for them. But if you got them, train them, because I like your quotes that you have in here for each one of those sessions. I think that's important. This question might be more so for Mrs. Stout than anything. I was surprised at looking at the top 10 countries of origin in Kent County, according to the American Community Survey. I thought we had a large population of Africans in this community as well.
We're very, very diverse for sure. But when it comes to the population, by far, it is those countries as far as the most numerous. All communities are important, and so that's why we're working to make sure our language access can serve those that speak in a language other than English, including ASL. I don't know.
And if I went to this particular website and just looked just for the African community on its own, would it give me a breakdown of the different tribes that are in this community or not?
If you find it, Commissioner Moody, share it with me, because
And me,
I looked.
Well, I'd say that.
I mean, Holland, do you have that for the most recent data? I did scan the internet. I could not find anything.
I said it because sometimes when Chief Lehman first came, I think it's the Congolese community had a forum and at a particular church that we both, Congolese, thank you. So sometimes I don't pronounce my words right, but don't mean that I'm not missing the point. Thank you.
I'm with you.
That community was very large at that date in which we went to that forum. And the information that they were asking for was basically all the information that you're giving today, which I think is very important. And that's why it's good to hear it. But I was just surprised that there was another forum that I attended where there was another group as well. And that group was pretty large too. And I was just trying to figure out.
One thing about me, I'm always open to learn and adjust slides. So if you can connect me to that group, and they can tell me that data source, I can look more intentionally. I can also work with Holland de la Cruz, who is the Welcome Plan Coordinator, to get updated data.
Yeah, but
I'd
Bethany
appreciate
Christian
that.
Services have that data as well, because they do a lot with African refugees in this community.
Bethany.
Oh, Bethany. They're on the part of the group. We did ask other groups for what data can get. Some data is just more confidential than others, or they can't break it down too much further, like in the school districts, for example.
So don't get me wrong, I'm not looking for anything negative. This is all positive. I was just surprised to see that they were not in the top 10.
Yeah, it's been hard. I know what I appreciate about today is that it shows, it shines a light on all of the incredible work that has been happening for the last really year. So I appreciate this update from both of you. And I recall being a part of some of those early conversations about trying to get good data, and it is much more difficult than we anticipated, unfortunately.
But we're not going to give up. We're going to keep looking, keep updating.
City Manager, and
Just
then,
in response to-
Commissioner Isasi, did you have your hand up?
Just in response to Commissioner Moody's question, and I know this is a very sensitive topic, given the tragic death of Patrick Lyoya and that community becoming more inclusive in discussions. And we've been intentionally engaging with that population. And as Mayor, we start the African Immigrant and Refugee Task Force, I think that's an opportunity for us to be even more intentional about understanding the parts of Kent County where the communities are. I've heard various numbers myself, and I don't want to over or underreport a number off the top of my head, but I too have been asking for that kind of demographic.
In real time, just got to update. Not census data, but the resettlement agencies are keeping track of their data. So in Kent County or Grand Rapids, I don't know what the geographic scope is, about 8,000 individuals, at the Kent County level, 8,000 immigrant refugees from Africa. So that's an informal number I just received through resettlement agency. I'm not to say that's the whole number, but that's part of the data. And then Ms. De La Cruz also, she has some preliminary data from 2022 that she just received this week that we will forward on to the commission.
Thank you. Thank you, City Manager, as well.
Yeah.
Appreciate hearing that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And in looking at the data too, I think it emphasizes our need to partner with other cities and the county, especially as you look at the demographics and the data from Kentwood. Having a good relationship and partnership with the city of Kentwood, I think, is essential as we do this work. So, thanks. Commissioner Isasi and then Commissioner Perdue.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Davis and Ms. Stout, for the presentation. You guys win for the biggest presentation of the day. At least I'm going to assume so. But I think it's a reflection of the commitment that the city has to understanding how do we try to reframe, restructure, recommit to a public safety system that is accessible for everybody. And it looks very different, as you said, City Manager. Like there are realities that have happened here in the city over the last year, and I appreciate you always bringing them forward and not trying to forget those things. And I think that's really important. And I was on that traffic stop study back in 2017. Did not have commission on my radar, but maybe that was the impetus. No, so I have a couple of questions. Lots of good information, and I think just kind of, I think I learned a lot even with the welcome plan, all the things that are being done. And I agree too, Mayor, it cannot just be on the city. And so appreciate the partnership of other entities, other cities, other counties, and other departments, because we know because of other issues that we're working on, like housing, that people are probably going to move around this region. They're not going to just solely stay in Grand Rapids. They shop in different areas. They go to school in different areas. And so I think that's an important reflection as well. My questions are around just a few. One, I'm interested to know, I have about 4 of them, so I'll read them and then you can let me know. How many people will be in this next cycle of Know Your Rights group? So I know you shared that for the middle school program, but I'm interested for the 16 and up group. For the proposals, will you be giving individuals, I know they can submit an idea, but some can do some proposals. Will there be an amount? Do you have a budgeted amount of what you can spend or what an average proposal will cost? I think, I just went through an RFP process and people said, we don't want to give you the proposal and we're going to give you the ideas. And we're like, we're not going to take the idea if it's your idea, but giving them some guardrails I think is always helpful. And that might be included, maybe just didn't get on the presentation. The second one or the third one is around the job fair pieces. So I know we're going to have this expungement event and JARS is going to be there, and that's great. Do we have others that want to join in? Is it just a limitation of space? Because I know that there'd probably be other organizations that would be interested in being a part of that, but I'm not sure what the process and, are they going to lead that fully? And then can you also share with the expungement event, I think I want to lift up what you said about the woman bawling. Like, I have so many people in my life who have a criminal background, who, even if they are doing something, they feel so stifled by this. And so you kind of said it really quietly, like she started bawling, but like this is like, you can see the change in people's lives. And so these sorts of events, I know they take a lot of energy. So the clip is, please volunteer. I got a notary on my day team, so I'm going to ask them to consider volunteering. It's a lot of work, but it's really important work. And so my question was, sorry, I got on a soapbox, is do they get information about like getting active like licenses or other things that maybe people kind of forego because, they're worried about getting caught up in a system that maybe might not be the most helpful to them? So that's a question about sort of the auxiliary supports. And then my last question is around the traffic stop study. I definitely am interested. 2017 was a long time ago. A lot of things have changed. I think, what have we learned, sort of nationally, but also here locally? And I know one of the issues in terms of tracking was that for those that have a Latino ethnicity, it was hard to categorize from a racial perspective. So I don't know if that has been resolved. I know that was a real big topic of conversation back in 17. And obviously there's been some changes with different censuses as well to identify even other racial or ethnic groups. You know, I know like, I can't think of the group right now, but I know on the east side, one of the Muslim and Arabic centers was really focused on making sure their community was identified in census. So I would love to know about what are some of those things learned in terms of the demographic pulls and how we can best use that in something in the future. So those are my questions. Thanks.
Well, thank you. I'll start. I'll try to start from the beginning, which was how many people will participate in the Know Your Rights program. It's unlimited.
Okay.
So there's two models for it. So one model is classes we offer, right? So we'll post, we're having this session on this day at this place, and it'll be open up to the capacity of people who want to attend it. The other option is for community organizations to host it themselves, and we just come teach the program, and that'll be based on how many people the organization allows to participate. But we're hoping to get as many people as possible through the programming. As it relates to our community-informed training proposal amounts, we spent a lot of time talking about whether or not we should put limits on how much the proposal should be. We decided against putting a limit directly, and the reason was we wanted to, first of all, this is the first go-round, right? So we really wanted to give community the opportunity to really imagine as much as they wanted to imagine. And then give us the opportunity to come back and look at the funding that was provided to us from Commission for this initial year of that and determine how to apply that. So we don't have an official limit yet, but I do expect that after this pilot year, there will be limitations put in place moving forward. As it relates to the felon-friendly job fair, so there were 11 spots available due to space concerns. My understanding is that all 11 spots have been filled, but if that changes, I'll make sure to let everybody know.
First come, first serve.
Right. That's kind of how it worked. But Josh came to the table and said, hey, we know these people who want to do this and who will hire felons. So we gave them first priority as it related to that part of the process. And with the expungement event, yes, there are auxiliary support services. At last year's event, we had several partners who came to provide some of those supports to members of the community, and it was actually a very well attended part of the program, and we do intend to do that. Again, if there's members of the community or organizations who would like to participate in that way, please let us know. We'd like to get you included in that. As it relates to the traffic stop study, and specifically around the update around ethnic groups or races, there are still a lot of those same difficulties still exist at the state level as it relates to how race and ethnicity is reported. But that is one of the concerns that we have identified as we talk to those data scientists from Harvard about how we evaluate what happened before and how we get some of that data we were hoping to get. So a lot of those same challenges do still exist, but we're trying to work through them the best we can.
Thank you, Mr. Davis.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Commissioner Perdue?
Yeah. Thank you for the presentation. Really great to see all the good work that's happening, all the really good intentional work. I just had a comment. I want to say, Mayor, appreciate your question about methodology around the traffic stop study. But I wanted to ask a question. I think it's about Know Your Rights. I see some of the metrics that you have listed here are really, related to output and participation, but really would love to see if you are not already considering some sort of survey tool to gauge progress on the stated goals. Is there a increase in knowledge? Is there a increase in understanding between community and law enforcement? Would people recommend the training? Those more substantive type questions so that we know, is this a meaningful experience? Is it really meeting our goals? We'd really like to see those sorts of questions and tools added to metrics so we can measure it.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, any final questions or comments? All right, thank you. Appreciate the update. Again, thanks to the entire team, both in your department and Ms. Stouts, and then all of our incredible partners that are helping us do this critically important but complex work. So thank you.
Thank you.
City Manager, final comments, and then commissioners will go down to executive session.
In addition to Mr. Davis and Ms. Stout, I do want to thank Chief Winstrom and Chief Lehman also for working with the Office of Oversight and Public Accountability, and as well as the labor union, to agreed to allow the recognition within the agreement. And while there may not always be understanding, at least agreement eye to eye. At least we have an understanding on the need to work together on behalf of this community. I also want to, one of the other employment engagement opportunities is our youth employment program, our Grow 1000 program. In addition to those opportunities Mr. Davis shared, we are now accepting applications for that program through the end of the month for all youth who are employed, who are ages 15 to 24, working the summer 20 hours a week. So please take advantage of that as well.
Yeah, thank you, City Manager. And I appreciate you lifting that up. And then we'll also add my thanks, and I know the thanks of a lot of my colleagues around this table, to both Chief Lehman, who we will miss when he retires in our fire department, but also a huge thank you to Chief Winstrom. Really appreciate his leadership in the department as well as his partnership with Mr. Davis's office. So thank you, Chief. All right, Commissioners, with that, we will go down to room 601.